Trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin, utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, level of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest any capital or trade that you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of and understand all risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts. Auvoria Prime does not exercise trading authority over your trades. You and you alone exercise discretionary trading authority over every trade.
Start off with the Forex calendar. Always make sure you forward the dates to Sunday if you're analyzing it early. But essentially what we care about here is what's going on next week. So starting tomorrow, March 7th, let's take a look at the calendar here. This is the last month in the quarter. 7th through the 13th is what we're going to be analyzing here. Do note next week, for some people that do a daylight savings time shift, that is going to be next Saturday. But that's essentially the heads up here. So next week news, that, you know, I'm almost positive that any GBP, and keep in mind, I didn't look at a lot of the developers' calls, so I don't know what they talked about. And by the way, with the questions, please post the questions in the Q&A window, not chat. Okay, it's a different window, a way I can sort of tick them off when I'm finished with each question. But regardless of what the developers said in any of the software, I'm not going to be trading GBP on Monday. Okay, I have no idea what Governor Bailey's actually a great guy, what he's going to say. Well, how's it going to be related to Brexit? We've already had a lot of problems in GBP. I don't want to be trading it on Monday. Okay. Now, does that mean I'm going to trade it Sunday and then pause before Monday? I mean, I typically don't get into that kind of detail. I'll just turn it back on when any of the red folder events are done. If you're using software that pauses for red folder events, that's fine. I still think that tomorrow could pose some problems with anything related to GBP. That's just my opinion. Okay, I'm not trading it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but if you do understand the risks, you have been warned. Tuesday, RBA Governor Lowe speaking. Again, same thing. A lot of this Aussie stuff's been very strong in relation to most other currencies. I have no idea what's coming out of this. I choose not to be trading. And I know the pause typically with many softwares can be anywhere between an hour before to an hour after. I don't know that I want to be trading it at all. So now Wednesday, Bank of actually, I think this is just a tentative press conference, right? So problem with these tentative things is they can really be at any time, which kind of stinks. A lot of this is just pandemic related. Usually these are set times with a set press release of comments coming out, not to sort of rile up, but again, more treachery in my opinion. CAD related Wednesday morning. ECB press conference. I mean, literally the next week is just riddled with stuff. You know, it's really going to be in almost any of these big majors, right? The interesting thing is, you know, this is really USD related, but the stimulus bailout put our asses in debt in the US even more package looks like it may be ratified at some point in the next 2 weeks, in which case, again, bringing more craziness to US dollar. And the whiff, if you will, not to confuse you guys even more, but the market's beginning, I should say all markets, and they're beginning to whiff inflation, okay? Or a hint is creeping up of inflation. And honestly, when that happens, bond markets go bananas, and that wags the tail of the Forex markets, and obviously equity markets don't like it when there's significant rallies in the prices of company or of countries' bonds, and I guess even corporate bonds for that matter. And that's why we had a real shakeout in equities in the markets last week. I don't think this is any dramatic insight on my part. It's just an observation of the complete inverse correlation between, and I'll go through the detail of it. I'm going to enter a new product for analysis today, which is called the TLT. It's nothing more than an ETF that is a proxy for the 10-year treasury in the US. So we're going to begin to look at that in our analysis going forward, because I think it's going to have an impact on currency and equity prices globally. So these are the news events. Next week is fraught with risk. If you decide not to trade next week, hey, more power to you, right? If you're trading Arrow, obviously you can go in and make these decisions real time yourself. I would be much more interested in just taking a break on some currencies. Let's go into just a quick discussion in equities. See the sell-off that took place corresponds to the rise, a rise in tensions, if you will, in the TLT. Okay, so this is the iShares TLT. We're just looking at the 20-year bond for now, just a daily analysis, but we can look at weekly. And the point is that when markets and the price of the bond actually drops, in this case the yield rises, right? So it's an inverse correlation between bonds selling off and prices rising. and the inverse of that. So just know that this was a big move. And I keep in mind, we're looking at a weekly chart here just to sort of illustrate the point, from the bananasness of the pandemic to back now testing the lows that we saw last March as far as US government bonds, right? It's that concern about inflation that's pushing us to this area. So let's take a look at a daily analysis. This corresponds, by the way, just for the opposite, this corresponds to a rise in our currency. So we came right up against, which has been a real solid area of support on the downside. Once we broke it, it became a solid area of resistance to the upside that has, at least for now on the daily chart of the dollar, contained us on Friday. Doesn't mean we're going to bust through this or not. If we now have probably the first time in a year, and I guess arguably maybe there's been plenty of times to look at this analysis, we need to look to see what's going on in the 20-year now, in my opinion, before we look at this dollar. Okay, so I want you to add a new layer of analysis in for those, and you can look at the 30-year, the 10-year. Just they're all giving hints that there may be inflation, and who knows? The bond markets typically, which I often refer to as the credit markets. And if you want some more insights into this, you can follow Jeffrey Gunlack on Twitter. He's the guy that runs Double Line Capital in LA. He's actually a really good guy for a billionaire, and he's exceptionally insightful with what his company's thoughts are as far as global macro on his Twitter feed. Double Line Capital. You can follow him. If anybody wants, I can post a link or show you his Twitter. But he's basically, the concern is now that inflation may be coming up. And in the end, we've talked a little bit about this. I'm surprised it would not have reared its ugly heads at some point in the past. Why? Well, because different central banks are throwing lots of cash down upon different markets, right? And what happens with a lot of that stimulus, if it really truly isn't needed by 100% of the participants that falls on, it just goes into assets, right? So it's beginning to inflate all kinds of stuff, whether it's something as simple as the price of real estate in the US, all the way to, price of equities, price of boats, trailers, cars. It's trickled down into a lot of different areas. So just be aware of that. TLT symbol, type it in for you. There are many different ways to analyze the bond market. I choose to stay away from the futures markets because not everybody has access to these symbols, and it's going to confuse a lot of people. So just stick to TLT, which is the iShares. Let's see. Let me just. Judson, just to answer that question, since I'm on that subject, because I'm probably going to forget. So let me just address that right now. Let me just log in here. So the best thing to do is just to go follow me on Twitter and then follow the people I follow. See right here? Post this. I only follow people on Twitter that add true value to these markets. You know, guys like Dr. Michael Burry. If you don't know who he is and you've never seen The Big Short, rent it. Great movie. Okay, this guy is an absolute genius, right? But I can see all the different people that I follow. Most of these people are directors of research, traders, hedge fund guys. Guys are just very generous with their time on here. I don't follow or post any crap related to anything to risk and trading. That's it. So let's go back to that charts. First, Euro US dollar. We are holding at the edge of the cliff. Now, obviously, this is an inverse correlation to the DXY. No surprise, right? Will it hold? I don't know. Okay. I have no idea. So everybody just be on high alert, send the signals waving through your uplines, right? As I always joke, cast it from the mountaintops to all your teams. I think next week, I just don't know. So when I don't know, I have a tendency to stay on the sidelines. And that includes a lot of different trading. So I'm not going to be trading anything next week. I'm just going to go see clients and, you know, reorganize portfolio thoughts. So, GBP, let's take a look at that. Just US dollar first. Now we've had a big old reversal from just a complete rip. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You guys saw this analysis from last week. Here's the weekly. I think this is going to contain us for now. I have no idea which way this is headed. It's going to be based a lot on what transpires in government bond land next week, primarily stemming from U.S. Treasuries first. GBP, JPY. Same thing, daily chart first. Up in nosebleed section, right? Nothing to really go on. So we move to the weekly, right? So we can't find any areas. Ultimately, I think the 55 area has to be tested. This was the big central or volume point of, or time-based point of control over the last few years. But right here we have some pretty decent short-term resistance. Remember, these are weekly charts you're looking at on this. These hold a lot more water, in my opinion, or a lot more credence should be put into these levels than something based on daily analysis. GBP, CHF. Same thing. We're past everything on the dailies, right? Up in nosebleed, got to move to the weekly. Ideally, this would be the area, 3350-ish area. Obviously, that's far away, but not that much clarity on this as far as where I think it could go, right? Who knows? I mean, we could just jump back and start balancing. You know, top range would be somewhere in the 2950, 60-ish area, right? Bottom of the range, 2578. Unfortunately, that's a broad range, right? If we're going to balance between these points, but it's best to take, you know, somewhere in this area here. See how I'm ranging between a couple of these candle tips all the way to the top area. Same thing with the bottom. You know, we had a pretty big volume-based defense of this level, right? See that? So to me, these are support and resistance lines, even though the squeeze zone indicators criteria haven't decided to put it there. You can, you know, just looking at it. USD JPY, same thing. Notice we've completely broken out of this channel. Not the best drawing, but you guys kind of get the idea. Weekly. Oops, let's reset scale here. Big move, right? You know, and I'll tell you, it's with all this stuff, and you know, I could see a lot of subscribers saying something like, wow, you know, I watched Steve's analysis and he doesn't want us to do anything, right? But this is an argument for being in a, if you can afford it, or you brought enough people into your downline, having a whole bunch of subscriptions, right? Like this would be a good week to, you know, take trades with Arrow, right? And maybe have Neo, which is much more conservative, running on one currency, right? GBP CAD, and not worrying about using the other stuff, right? Or pausing it at the very least with software like Variable in front of red folder events. But I would expect the 108 and right under the 109 area to be a little bit of a magnet on the upside here on the weekly chart. CAD CHF. Let's take a look at USD CAD first. Right, we start off with the US based currencies on these and analyses first. Actually, let me just been stuck in a tight range here, right? This certainly argues for being in a martingale system if you're trading this currency pair. Nothing too crazy going on here, which is nice, right? And since I really should bring in, just for the question I got on GBP NZD, it held on daily. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the GBP CAD though. You guys to kind of get more of a, whoops. I think it blew me out of the system here. Let's try again. All right, here we go. GBP CAD on the daily. It's part of obviously our crazy movements in the pound many days ago that sparked some drawdown in some of the GBP related pairs trading. But I think this is a pretty solid area here. It's like we could be bouncing between our 50 SMA, which is this green line here, and the 77, 60-ish area. Okay, Euro GBP. I don't have a lot of time today, guys. So I'm just sort of tearing through this stuff. Euro GBP in a daily. Got to move to the weekly. Why? Can't see any support down here. See, move to the weeklies. Let's reset scale. No man's land down here. This was our previous support point. Notice that it bounced off that on the weekly last week. Okay, poked its head down through it, as you could probably see right down in this area here before, and then finished above a support line from almost 2 years ago. So that's holding. Still puts some value in longer term support lines. Ultimately, I would assume that we're more than likely going to go back down and test this 85.38 area. USD CHF, did I already do that? I think I did, didn't I? Am I losing it? Let's try it out. Why is it not on the list? Oh, here it is. Didn't I already do this? Let's take a look at the this one again. All right, so dollar Swiss daily. It came right up to where our, and I talk a lot about when anything in terms of candlestick analysis breaks through an area where there's been like a whole bunch of balance, like right in this entire area, right? And it breaks into a new area. A lot of times it'll leave what's called notches as it zippers through a big level. See how much this has been which isn't necessarily, and I guess you could use this line, so that 92, just right under 9,300 area, right? It's big resistance at this point on the daily for this, but you really have right in this area, and I talked a little about this, was last Saturday or Tuesday, how typically when something is auctioning within a certain range and then it auctions down into a new price range, how oftentimes it'll leave what's called missing notches. That's more of a term for the futures markets, but you can apply it to Forex. And you guys aren't necessarily gonna be able to see that, but we came back up and notice we didn't fill those notches, and I can't really get this blown up. Actually, let me just try this. Can I illustrate it like that? And maybe that's a little better. So you see how we didn't quite get to where I think there's some missing trades through, but it came back up to it at this point in last fall. And notice we traded through it. So we've completed the auction, because the propensity for markets to come back where they've had what's called an incomplete auction or an unfilled, or an area where there's a gap, if you will, markets have a tendency to want to come back and be magnetized to try and fill that. And once it's come back and it's filled this, it really is a big tell. So notice it's pulled back. Now, if it continued to drop back down, essentially, obviously with the continued lift, if you will, in the US dollar related to inflationary maybe creeping back into the marketplace globally, you would expect this to continue higher. If in fact, maybe those inflation fears are quelled this week by some or a group of central bankers in discussions, maybe we'll see a pullback in their true defense of this area, right? I just think that a lot of times when a new factor is brought in, and I'm, not necessarily inflation, some like brand new factor to the market, but now it is becoming not a tailwind, but a serious headwind for these markets. We have to pay a lot more attention to any discussions or any questions that go out to any central banker or leader about inflation, right? And most central banks' goals obviously is monetary stability primary, and full employment in their respective countries, but it's also keeping the inflation or deflationary factors surrounding money supply and currency in check. So whether it's a mandate of any central bank, it typically is very important to them, but now it has become a headwind. So we're going to really have to pay more attention to what's going on in anything. So whether it's the bonds trading in the UK or different countries bond markets in Germany, so forth, I'm actually going to bring more of those ETFs into the analysis for us, and these ones we're going to look at in addition to TLT are super liquid, and they're an excellent representation of the country's underlying bond market. All right, let's see. Let's get rid of some of these. Did I do CAD CHF already? I forget. NAS 100. My XIC here, or you could do the QQQs if you want. Let's take a look at the triple Qs here. So we're back above support on the NASDAQ for those trading tech stocks, the US-based stuff here. If you're not familiar with what the QQQ is, it's one of the most liquid ETFs traded on this planet. 306 is support. We got to hold this. We're probably going to be dropping back down to somewhere in this area. Keep in mind, this stuff's been on an absolute tear, guys, right? If I reset price scale, look at this. I mean, this market's been on an absolute tear. Those buying in at the top, shame on you for finally getting involved here. You should be getting involved down here. When I was squawking about this in the spring, and putting a lot of clients pretty heavy in tech that even were older clients, just because of the absolute massive sell-off in the markets. Remember, I'm more of a value buyer for clients. I'm interested in buying in areas like this. We're not presented with a lot of these opportunities, obviously, but when those do show themselves to be the case, I'm more interested in getting in. Now, with newer cash to a client, you'd want to look to corrections like this, where we held support at the 260 area in the Qs, before getting involved in something like this ETF. As we begin to expand out the financial management and the sort of wealth building components we're going to be putting into AP down the road, I'm going to get a lot more detailed into how all this stuff plays into a portfolio. Let me just go back real quick. There's for the Bitcoin questions. You guys know where I am on this. 30,000 personally. I'm not buying at any other point. And if I do buy here, it's going to be about quarter size. Right, so look in the chat window if you want for the Twitter and or the YouTube links. The other question I have gotten surrounds the other links that I should be posting. Let's take a look at those here. Social media channels. I love it. Great stuff. So I'll post that as well. All of them there, I think, are in here. We just need to add the variable chat window for those that are not familiar with that. I posted that variable chat window. I should say variable Telegram link on my Market Watch. Okay, so let's just go real quickly through this just so we can make sure everybody's got the right risk situation going on. Right, this is the advisory. Don't give anybody your passwords. We must have had some sort of problem with that, I can assume. Right, give somebody else your passwords, they go in and mess up your accounts, guys. We're not liable. Don't do it. Or if you do that, change the password once they get into whatever to your account. This is the variable stuff. I was forward that. This is new. I'm going to start forwarding all of the NEO. This is that crash course that I think everybody should take if you're considering NEO, which I'm in the process of setting up as well. This NEO's done really, really well, guys. Really well. Definitely would take a look at it. What else did I want? So here's the variable traders chat. And all you do is just click on this, and Telegram obviously just opens up into that. As far as the traders chat, here's the group right here. Let me just jump back first, and I'll copy this link and post it right now. There we go. Variable traders chat. Keep it professional. What else do I want to go over? Resetting VPS. Get in the habit of doing that every weekend. What else? More on NEO charts, obviously. Got a lot of questions on this. It's a great primer on technical analysis. Get you in the mood to recognize chart patterns. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to show. All right, guys. Let's see the last question here. If in open trades, but wanting to not trade after listening to you, how is the best way to approach that as the elect opens tomorrow? Elect. Not sure what elect is. Talk about the markets. Let's go back. In open trades, I'm wanting to not trade after listening to you. If in open trades, if the open trades are profitable, right, you can close them down. I have exhaustive, and many of the developers have posts in their Telegram channels that explain how to turn off. And I have a ton of that on my Telegram channel, lots of explanations in detail, depending on the software, of how to turn it off if you're in profit. If you're in drawdown, it just depends upon where the drawdown is. Did I not show GBP CAD? Am I losing it? Let's take a look. Steve has lost it. GBP CAD, right? Didn't I go over this? The hell. Euro JPY, I already went over. All right, so let's take a look at the daily chart first. Yeah, I think I went over this, right? Go over it again. This is the resistance point up here, 777. Weekly chart, 7748 area. Euro JPY. Daily chart, nothing up here, right? Move to weekly. Let's throw up a nosebleed section. Ideally, support right here at 2715, and we are probably headed to this area. This is provided we see strength, obviously continuing forward in the euro and/or just an excessive weakness related to the yen. That would be my assumption. This is a tough pair to put any solid technical analysis on it because there's really nothing up here, right? I mean, there's lots of points where we stopped and turned around and some sloppy head and shoulders patterns here, but ideally this 2720 area is really where the resistance was. We've broken above it. So typically we're going to have to try and seek an area of auctioning. Could be all the way up here. This whole 32 area, which is essentially the top of this double top pattern right here. Cool. All right, guys, I have a date with a golf cart and my son. So it is time for me to wish everybody a great weekend. Have faith. The Forex markets can be moderately conquered if one has the education. And we will continue to bring more of that to you. So watch all of the videos and make sure you share with your team everything going on. Looks like Tyler just posted the Gearbox Developer Insights Recap 1 and 2. So for those in Gearbox, they just hit, in addition to his videos up along with all of them. Please tune in, at the very least, because a lot of times I'll hear from subscribers, hey, I don't have the time. But in many cases, the insight can really be had in these videos by just listening to them. So just put them on when you're in your car. Don't watch the videos. We don't want you to wreck, obviously. But you can listen to a lot of what they have to say. And you're getting almost the same information. So I would encourage when you're driving around, listen to my annoying voice. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you on Tuesday.